you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Professor Ita Sage is the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. He's been talking to us on the program. Let's continue the conversation now. If you look at the, some of the reactions that we've been getting, Mr. Falana is asking the president to relinquish his the position as a minister. Also, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Petroleum Resources has also shares that position. Do you think that the president should relinquish that position?
Not necessarily so. I think what we're really interested in is the effectiveness of that ministry. If the Minister of State is invested with sufficient authority, he can do the job effectively and report to the president at regular intervals. So I think that is where we should focus our attention on. That is investing the Minister of State with all the requisite powers and authority so that all the parastatals under the ministry will recognize this authority and respect it and make the minister the medium through which messages and activities will be channeled to the president. And there should be strict observance of the various regulations and procedures of those agencies, NMPC included. So I think the Minister of State can effectively do the job of the minister because, of course, the president has so many other things in his hands that we don't expect him to give full attention to any specific ministry. But he can retain the position and the ministry can still be run effectively if the Minister of State is given sufficient powers, if power is delegated effectively to him.
Professor, they say that perception is sometimes everything. With the current state of things, the report on the SGF, the suspended Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Babachi Lawa, and also the report on the DG, the suspended DG of the NIA, Mr. Oke. It looks so much that Nigerians are expecting a lot from the president. What can you say about this kind of an urgency that the government should be putting in these sort of issues, which of course goes down to how Nigerians perceive this government as a government that said it wanted to fight corruption?
Well, of course, I have no doubt in my mind that the present government is actually fighting corruption in accordance with its mandate and its promises. There's no question about that. But on the specific issue of the secretary, the former secretary to the government, suspended secretary to the federal government, and the director of the NIA, I would agree that action has been much too slow. And there should be immediate decision on this matter so that we can put it to rest and move on. I agree with that. But I certainly disagree absolutely with anyone who suggests that this government is not fighting corruption with all its mights and resources.
Well, a senior member of the APC did say when it comes to fighting corruption in other agencies and arms of government aside the executive, that the presidency or the government uses insecticide. But when it comes to fighting corruption within its own sector, the executive, or within its own atmosphere, it does use deodorant. That's a perception, isn't it?
Well, that's the perception of that particular gentleman, but I don't agree with that. I think there is an even-handed approach to the issue of fighting corruption. Everybody who is suspected of corruption or of the commission of economic and financial crimes will be investigated, and the EFCC and the ICPC who are the bodies who are invested with the authority to act in such matters, will act in accordance with their own priority.
Okay, Professor.
I think we should make it clear.
Okay.
We cannot handle all corruption cases at the same time. As you know, in this country, the cases of corruption go right from the top and permeate to the lowest level. So there are hundreds of thousands of corruption cases.
But Professor, if you are saying
it makes sense
that
for the agencies involved to choose what to pick and what to drop, or what to suspend.
From your standpoint, Professor, you're saying that the government is fighting corruption, but from the citizen and the voters who voted President Muhammadu Buhari into office, they want to ask a big question. Give us evidence. Show us. What can you tell us about the evidence or the success of this anti-corruption war? Perhaps a big case that you can cite as an example of this anti-corruption war success.
The evidence is staring every Nigerian in the face. Only a person acting in extreme bad faith or who is a beneficiary of corruption will question that evidence. We have had an accumulation of recovered assets. There is no day that passes without some asset being recovered. And we are counting now towards ₦1 trillion, if not more, of recovered assets. We see that all the time. That's number one. We also know that the petroleum subsidy scam has been brought to a permanent halt. Under the former administration, 380 billion. The government was being defrauded of 380 billion naira every year. All that has ended.
Okay.
And there are so numerous other things that have been done. We have the whistleblower policy, which is effectively bringing out so many cases of corruption and hidden Nigerian assets. We have mutual agreements with various countries all over the world through which the recovery of our assets are being facilitated. So I think people who criticize this government are thinking only of conviction of high-profile persons. That, of course, has had some hiccups. But let us wait and see on the long run how things are going to develop, because I know a lot of effort is being made in that direction. In fact, only 2 days ago, the Director General of the IITA, or former Director General of the IITA, was convicted of corruption and sentenced to, I believe, 40 years imprisonment, of course, 5 years running concurrently over so many charges. So, as I said, anyone who says this government is not successfully tackling corruption is putting on blinkers of bad faith, or is totally ignorant, or is a beneficiary of corruption and is part of corruption fighting back.